Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for attending today's session. Together with our partners at the High Level Climate Champions team, the Resilient 40 Network, and Oxford Net Zero, as well as your incredible climate leaders, entrepreneurs, researchers, and industry leaders, I am thrilled to welcome you to this dialogue. My name is Kaya Axelson, and I am a Policy Engagement Fellow at the University of Oxford, where I work to host dialogues and events like this, bridging academic insights on mitigating climate change and the practitioners who need to put them into place. At night, during the last couple of weeks, I have been hosting these youth dialogues as part of the High Level Champions Global Race to Zero campaign. During the daytime, I have been crunching numbers on what kind of the global stock take in our race to net zero is, as well as sort of highlighting that work on our website. What I find most devastating about this work is the disconnect between kind of the two different narratives that I'm seeing. Hearing at night the stories of youth who are leading the charge on mitigating climate change through resilient business models, while during the daytime seeing how far we have to go, how many companies have yet to set a net zero target that aligns with Paris. So I have to say that while today was a long time coming, the dialogue that we have here today, it is also highlighting some of the corporate leaders who are doing the most on climate change or who are pledging to do the most, working on blueprints as we speak to mitigate their carbon targets, to mitigate their carbon impact, to set net zero targets, to join the race to zero, or to disrupt the market in another way. And so I thank you so much for joining us. Our industry leaders have been very brave in coming tonight to answer the hard questions that the youth will put to them. Because we're all here for dialogue, for solution seeking, and for creativity in this crisis that we simply don't have time to shut down conversation on. This week, we also heard from thousands of UK primary and secondary school pupils who had their own youth climate summit, which I think can make us joyful about what the future might look like if they're self-organizing in this way. And they voted on what their top priorities were. And their top ask is that we support regenerative farming and stop the subsidization of farming, which degrades ecosystem. So that's from the youth younger than us. Today's agenda really matters to a lot of people. Additionally to this dialogue, earlier in the week, we had a resilience dialogue with voices from the front line highlighting the serious climate change related issues around food insecurity that people are experiencing right now. So it couldn't be more relevant what we're discussing today. But unlike many panel discussions that you might have seen over the last few weeks or several years, this is going to be much more of a discussion in which youth leaders set the agenda. There's many reasons that we believe that young people need to set the agenda, not just that we're the ones who will be inheriting this planet, but also that we come often to this problem with a blank slate, or if not a blank slate, creativity, less of a fixed mindset, and the idealism that young people have to continue to bring to this world if we're going to meet our 1.5 degree target. So as Paul Pullman, the founder of Imagine and former CEO of Unilever once said, at a youth setting agenda event, I might add, don't just give young people a seat at the table, give them the whole table. And so we want to thank Paul and all of our industry leaders who do give us a seat at the table. Tonight we made our own, and we're so happy that you're here with us. Today's topic, of course, centers around the question, from soil to plate, what are your companies doing to build a sustainable net zero food system so that future generations can experience a stabilized climate and a fruitful planet? But I will let our enterprising young agri-experts ask you these questions in their own ways. First, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Aoife Haney, who works with me at the Smith School of Enterprise and the Environment and the Oxford Saïd Business School. And Aoife's work has empowered thousands of young leaders to map the system in order to develop regenerative business models. So Aoife, thank you so much for hosting us tonight, and please take the stage.
Thank you so much, Kaya, and thank you for your leadership and your commitment and your work night and day to move this agenda forward. It's an absolute honor to be here to add my welcome to this really special event, this session in the Race to Zero November Dialogues. And it's an honor to represent both the business school side, business school, and the Smith School of Enterprise and the Environment, who are involved in jointly hosting this very special session. You're really in for a treat with this model of dialogue. As Kaya said, this is very unique. You're going to hear the young people bringing the challenging questions to business leaders. We're absolutely delighted to have business leaders here with us, but the young people today are going to be starting out with the challenging questions for these leaders. It will be candid. It may get a little heated, a little bit spicy at times, but it will always be focused on engagement and leaving egos at the door. And that's very much enshrined in the principles that the dialogue and this conversation that Kaya explained are very much centered around. So it's going to be a challenging but collaborative session. Let me just open by telling you very briefly why I'm excited about this session in particular. We know that young people today have a very powerful message to share, and the very young, as Kaya shared with us to start us off. We're seeing it on the streets. We've seen it on the streets. And I'm seeing it day to day in the classroom, in virtual classrooms now, and hopefully in physical classrooms in the months to come. The students in Oxford and in other universities, they're demanding more. They're demanding more in the curriculum on climate. They're making action happen in universities and across many different industries, across many different systems, and we need them to make this happen in order to move the agenda forward. At the Side Business School, one of the core parts of our curriculum is a program called GoTo, Global Opportunities and Threats Oxford. It's a program that all of our MBA students, both the main MBA program and our executive MBAs, participate in every year. It's a very special initiative that I've been co-directing for the last 2 years. Teams of students engage in projects. They're very focused on action. The idea is to help our students to navigate the complexity of systems change, the systems challenges that we're facing as a world today. Last year, our entire MBA cohort focused on climate action, and we had a track on food and agriculture. So looking at the intersection of climate with some of the issues that you're going to be hearing about in this very special session today. We had our students working on a range of different projects on food loss and agricultural practices, on alternative proteins, some of the topics that will come up in today's session. And as a joint appointment between the Smith School and the business school, I can really speak from my personal experience on the need and the difficulty of engaging in this work across boundaries, building bridges between different departments in a university, between disciplines. We know that we really need science and business to meet if we're going to be able to accelerate action on climate. We need to see bridges built between policymakers and business in new ways. And we need to see bridges built between generations to drive innovation, to bring creativity, to see the change that we need, that we know is needed and needed fast. So events like this, the one that you're joining today, they're exactly the kind of conversation, they're exactly the type of engagement that we need to see much more of. They're courageous, inspiring. That's what we need to see much more of going forward if we're going to make a difference in activating the really deep change in systems that we need to see happen for the benefit of all across all geographies. So there's lots of work to do, and there are many different opportunities for us to shape the future together. So to get that work moving, I want to hand the baton back to Kaya, the leader of this series of events, to get us started for today's session. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you and seeing you engage in some creative conversations.
Thank you so much, Aoife, and I'm so grateful for your research and the work of others like you who are helping to bridge that gap that you mentioned. Another person who straddles worlds, I might add, is our next speaker, Rufino Escasani. Rufino is a sustainable catter farmer. He's also an entrepreneur and a little bit of a polymath. So Rufino, please, thank you so much for asking our first question.
Thank you, Kaya. Well, hi everybody. I am Rufino Escasani from Argentina. Our farm is located in the Paraná Delta. The Paraná Delta, it's an ecoregion in the seaboard of Argentina, constituting one of the biggest wetland networks in the world. This geographical entity covers 5,400 square miles and has the capacity to regulate hydrological pulses and mitigate climate change effects. It is a major soil carbon sink, and if properly managed, its extensive grasslands hold a strong carbon sequestering potential. It is also home to an outstanding variety of plants and animals, with more than 200 grass species already identified in our farm alone. Abundant clean water and nutritious pastures have made cattle farming the main activity in these lands since colonial times. This livelihood later developed into what we now call the native gaucho culture. The gauchos' way of life is intertwined with the land. They are not here just to produce beef. They are stewards of the land and they care for it. Today, market conditions have made natural grassland cattle farming hardly sustainable. This, added to the advance of industrial agricultural frontier, has put the Paraná Delta at risk of being irreversibly transformed. Preserving this land is key for biodiversity conservation and for the ecosystem functions it provides. A thriving Paraná Delta is a natural solution to mitigate climate change effects at a global scale. My next question is for Anna from Tesco. Anna, our way of farming contributes to the well-being of the ecosystem, its biodiversity, and the communities that inhabit this land. In what way is your company working to bring land stewardship into farming? How can major food retailers like yourselves support farmers like us that protect and regenerate places like the Paraná Delta? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Ruffino. That's a really thoughtful, excellent question. And you're absolutely right. Effective land stewardship is critical to ensuring our ecosystems are protected and restored. For Tesco, through our partnership with WWF, we're currently working to scale and standardize how food companies in the UK can embed sustainable and regenerative practices. For us, our vision is that all landscapes that UK retailers source from meet the triple challenge, which means being good for nature, people, and climate. This means that these landscapes are rich in biodiversity, have good soil health, good water quantity and quality, and reduced GHG emissions. That these landscapes provide nutritious, sustainable, affordable food and provide sustainable livelihoods for farmers and growers. This is what we're aiming for and we're working towards through our partnership. Now, we know that today some of the biggest barriers to regenerative agriculture include limited knowledge about regenerative farming practices, a lack of harmonized on-farm metrics and databases to monitor and measure impacts, as well as a system-wide failure to price in externalities into the food system, and importantly, communicate the stories of how this food is produced in a clear and compelling way to consumers. We also recognize that we live in a world where 80% of the world's food is produced by smallholders. So how do we get more local foods into our supermarkets? At Tesco, we're working with our suppliers and our farmers, primarily through our sustainable farming groups, to tackle some of these challenges. And we're going to be reporting on our progress as we go. But beyond our direct supply chains, we're also working on influencing wider industry change, particularly when it comes to tackling issues such as deforestation linked to forest risk commodities such as soy, palm oil, and timber. All, really a very pressing topic within South America, within Argentina, as you know better than I do, Rufino. As a company, we believe that forest protection is an absolute driver of economic growth, not a sacrifice to that growth. And that forest protection also provides healthy ecosystems and supports productive landscapes and resilient communities. So in Brazil, where we source some of our soy from, we continue to push for a biome-wide solution to protecting the Cerrado. And that's actually where most of our Brazilian soy comes from. And we do that through chairing the SOS, which supports the Cerrado Manifesto. And we continue to kind of try and bring about industry coalition and action to put money on the table in order to create the mechanisms and the financial mechanisms that we need to support farmers to drive that system change within those ecosystems, within the Cerrado. For us, this work forms part of our commitment to source all of our UK soy from verified deforestation-free regions by 2025. Now, we absolutely recognise there's a load of work ahead of us, but we are absolutely determined to get there. But collaboration and collective action is absolutely fundamental for us to be able to achieve it together. So I hope that goes some way to answer your question, but very happy to take any follow-ups in due course.
Thank you, Anna.
I think probably we have to move on to the next question, and maybe we can circle back to you, Anna. Thank you so much for that. Rufino, did you have any other questions for our panelists?
Yes. As we all know, our global food system is out of balance. Modern farming has allowed technology to override ecology and biology, stressing not only animals, but soils, plants, and entire habitats, ultimately contributing to the instability of our planetary system. Today, we see complex food products based on ingredients and chemicals we consumers hardly recognize, nor do we understand the potential implications they hold for people and for planetary health. My next question is for Rebecca from Impossible Foods. Rebecca, companies like yours position themselves as non-animal food producers, yet this does not guarantee a responsible and sustainable sourcing of your raw materials. I've noticed that you don't have a net zero climate target and that you haven't joined the race to zero. How can food producers like yourselves ensure accountability along your supply chain to foster agroecological practices that align with the global climate efforts?
Thank you, Rufino. I'll kind of start by saying that we're very much a part of the race to zero, even if we have not necessarily joined this particular corporate action platform. So there's a lot to unpack with this question. I think it's a really excellent question, and one that we should be asking more of the industry overall, but it's going to be a little bit of a longer answer. So let's talk about a few things. The first is that the sole reason for Impossible Foods to exist, and we're a plant-based meat company based out of California in the United States. The sole reason that we exist is to halt climate change and to spare land for the preservation of biodiversity and for carbon capture. So we're committed to a much higher level of ambition on a much faster timeline than net zero in our operations by 2050. We're providing a toolkit of plant-based meat that completely recapitulates the culinary and nutritional experience of eating meat. So I can assure you that if the fight against climate change and the efforts to halt the catastrophic collapse of wild animal populations was going perfectly swimmingly, that we would not exist. I don't think we could have pulled our CEO and founder away from Stanford if there wasn't a problem to be solved. So what we're trying to do is understand how we can increase ambition, how we can provide a toolkit for those who do also want to participate in the race to zero, but the way that we're approaching it is a little bit orthogonal. So I'll speak to also the appropriate level of ambition to address climate change in a moment. But also to say, secondly, the business context for joining things like net zero commitments, kind of for scope 1 through scope 3, is something that we're working on, but is not necessarily the biggest driver for how we're going to address climate. So the purpose of Impossible Foods is to provide consumers globally with this vastly less resource-intensive way to eat meat and dairy products that they love at scale. So Rufino, I'm not worried about operations like yours. I actually come from a cow-calf operation. I grew up on one. I came here from a research ranch where the individuals who were responsible for overseeing the rangeland were, as you said, the most focused on sustainability and stewardship. I am talking about scale and the kind of inherent metabolic inefficiency associated with animal farming that you just can't get around. It's just math. When you are feeding 7 to 10 billion people on the planet, you're going to encounter problems, and that's already what we've seen. So the uniform consensus of climate scientists is that plant-based dietary transitions are absolutely critical to achieving climate stabilization. The sticky part is getting consumers an alternative that they actually are going to want to eat. And so that's where we come in with a product that uses 96% less land and generates about 90% less greenhouse gas emissions compared to a conventional US farming production system. So livestock farming takes up like half of the ice-free surface of the planet. That's an enormous land footprint. And because of the current scale of consumption, it is disastrous for the climate and for conservation of biodiversity. Like I said, animal metabolisms are just inherently inefficient compared to going directly to plants, and cattle in particular, as you all know, require large areas of land. There is a reason that land use intensification is occurring in places like the Amazon, and there's a reason that soy expansion is occurring in places like the Cerrado. This is not to produce tofu to feed to people. It is by and large going to the livestock feed industry. So how do we start addressing this? Well, as a just kind of example, if you were to look at the total livestock farming system across the world, and you were to say, okay, we're actually going to look at this in terms of carbon opportunity cost. If, as an extreme scenario, the whole world were to stop farming animals and allow that landscape to regrow, that 50% of the ice-free surface to revegetate passively, it contains 200 gigatons of carbon. Combine that with the emissions mitigation, you're not having to generate as much methane, the nitrous oxide, the carbon dioxide required for crop tillage. You get like 1,000 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So that's nearly 2 decades worth of carbon fuel burning. That's the level of ambition that we're looking at. And it's one that we actually do report on, but our timeline is 2035, not 2050. The entirety of our business model is geared at setting the clock back on climate change. So in addition to companies doing less bad, we desperately need companies whose core product is negative emissions technology, whose entire purpose is to decarbonize the atmosphere. So additionally, and I've heard this mentioned a number of times, please, when you're thinking about regenerative food futures, you've got to be thinking not only about land sharing, conservation, tillage is great, soil carbon is great, you have to be thinking about land sparing, because that is immensely important for climate action, for wildlife preservation, and for ecosystem services. So none of this is to suggest that we do not prioritize operational sustainability. We do. We have a net zero waste program. We audit the carbon intensity and water use intensity of our supply chain. We have agricultural programming that will be coming out geared at smallholder resilience. We produce at our flagship site with an 85% GHG free grid, and we work really closely with supply chain and sustainability progress with our partners. So we could set decarbonization goals within manufacturing, and we will eventually, when we can do so credibly under hypergrowth scenarios, under science-based targets. But that is, to be fair, literal rounding error compared to the significance of displacing global demand for beef. So what I'd encourage you to kind of think about is that this is not an either or issue. This is a yes and issue, where we need both of these things. So something we need to be careful of within the sustainability community is understanding that corporate net zero is laudable, it's great, but is it sufficient? No, I don't think it is. I think if we're going to keep this planet livable with 8 to 9 billion people, we need more multinationals that have decarbonization as the core business model.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for your answer. And well, before passing on to Kaya, thank you both. And I hope companies like yours can be part of the solution, taking the lead instead of waiting for customers to make the hard choices. So all the best, and thank you for your replies. Thank
you so much, both. Wow, that was a riveting round one. And And I think it just shows that we are on the right track when we have people like you both working on two parts of the solution. Our next speaker is Leah Bessa. Leah Bessa is a sustainable entrepreneur and co-founder of Gourmet Grub, which is a fascinating company, also an alternative protein. We have a theme here. Leah is based in South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, Leah. What's your next question?
Hi, thank you so much, Kaya. As you said, I am an agripreneur from Cape Town, South Africa. I believe that the need has increased to move agriculture to adopt more sustainable and environmentally friendly practices. Smaller startups like myself hold the promise of solving many of the pressing challenges. Through innovative technologies, we can truly revolutionize agriculture as we know it. Regenerative agriculture, monitoring and precision, sustainable farming, meat and dairy replacements are all inevitable parts of our future of food. The only question at this stage is when they will arrive and become mainstream. We know that we have to dramatically change our food system by 2030 at the very latest, and the only way to do that is to implement radical solutions on a large scale. My role with our company Gourmet Grub is to develop a viable dairy alternative using sustainably farmed insects. In order to scale up our production, we require large consumers who are willing to be part of the scaling up journey with us, who also have the security of purchasing our product and distributing it far and wide. This is where big companies like yours come in. Big corporations dominate the agricultural industry, and traditionally they operate on cost and scale factors. This makes it near impossible for smaller companies like ourselves to compete. We are agile and innovative, but currently work on much smaller volumes and require a trusting partnership with a corporation to scale and grow alongside you. With commitment to the vision of creating a truly sustainable agricultural system, innovative startups like ourselves and big agricultural corporations like yours can use our respective strengths to work together and implement solutions to meet our planet's deadlines. So my first question is for Anna from Tesco. Lead scientists around the world all agree that we need to start reducing our meat consumption in order to meet the planet's needs. But when you walk through a lot of Tesco's aisles and many major food retailers, most of the meal options include animal products and meat, which is farmed through unsustainable and often inhumane industrial practices. So how can a major food retailer like Tesco lead with shifting diets of young people to offer more alternative ingredients and low carbon intensive options, whilst also looking beyond just the obvious plant-based solutions?
Thanks, Leah. It's a great and very important question, and frankly, one that isn't easy to answer because you can't force customers to buy a particular product. So we have to be very smart and creative about how we offer healthier and more sustainable food options in our stores. A big part of this does involve increasing the proportion of plant protein versus animal protein. And we've recently taken the first step on this journey by committing to increase the sales of plant-based meat alternatives by 300% by 2025. We already sell more plant-based products than any other UK retailer, but this really kicks it up a notch for us. And we're hoping to be able to share more on our strategy to deliver healthy and sustainable diets early in the new year. We're also exploring how we can profile and promote healthier and more sustainable foods, such as placing plant-based meat alternatives in the same aisle as traditional meat products, which we're already doing. But in order to do that, you really have to get under the hood and understand how customers and consumers think and behave in order to influence and inform your strategies. As you've rightly highlighted, all the science tells us that we need to eat more plant protein and less animal protein. And when we do eat animal protein, that it's responsibly and sustainably sourced. We're currently exploring how we can integrate environmental and welfare practices and metrics to enable us to deliver better meat products to customers who want animal protein. And more work is kind of ongoing in the background, currently working with our partners on that. For a food company, it's really important, though, that the changes we make tackle both environmental considerations and welfare considerations, as well as nutritional ones, and deliver healthy and sustainable food that's affordable and accessible to all. It's no good if we have amazingly sustainable products that aren't accessible or appealing to the wider population. And part of this is therefore really about understanding and engaging customers on the journey. With this in mind, we're currently working out how we can integrate key nutrition and sustainability impact data into our product development process, and thinking about how we can most effectively share that information with our customers to help shape and inform that healthy and sustainable kind of buying choices at point of sale. So lots of work going on, but what I would say is it's still relatively early days. What really encourages me, though, is that we're seeing a massive wave of interest and engagement, not only from big companies, multinationals, whether that's retailers or it's food manufacturers, some of whom are on the call today, but also really importantly by startups and by disruptor companies like yours that are actually really showing us what can be done. And that's actually also why Tesco has developed an innovation fund, so that it can provide seed funding to really innovative ideas and solutions that can disrupt the current status quo of the food system, but get us to where we need to in terms of delivering on those healthy, sustainable, affordable and accessible diets. So thanks so much for your question.
Thanks, I appreciate your answer, and I'm really happy to hear that you're supporting all the weird and wonderful startups like ourselves, and I look forward to seeing insects on your shelves. My next question is for Laurent from Nestlé and Beer from Coca-Cola. What are you doing to help scale the solutions of small regenerative agripreneurs, particularly here in the Global South? Sort of looking at what is your cost of investment?
Laurent, would you take this question first, please?
Yes, of course, with pleasure. And I was on mute, so I started, but on mute.
Welcome.
So, yes, agricultural raw materials are a critical part of our equation when it comes to carbon emission. And you know that we have taken these commitments. We are part of the race to zero, and we will unveil our plan in the coming weeks and providing full details on the level of investments. But we are talking big numbers, and what we plan to do is to source millions of tons of products coming from regenerative and sustainable agriculture, and work with millions of farmers, and we talk probably billions of investments. And this race, if this is a race, and this is a race, is a marathon, so this is really for the long term. So we are laying out our plans, and I just would like to add another element to it. We got also a global youth initiative, and in this global youth initiative, we got one pillar and one big focus area, which is agripreneurship. One of the big issues which we got in the agricultural sector is that farmers are aging. Average age or median age is around 60. And there is a real need for a new generation to take over. So we want to do the utmost to help them, support them, motivate them to undertake in the agricultural sector, because the solution is not to move to the cities to find a job, and they are, you know, technology can help, of course. And contributing to the sustainability agenda, certainly a motivating factor. So we have plans to help young farmers establish themselves and undertake globally, but of course also in the Global South. So yeah, big focus area for us, starting with supporting young agripreneurs, and of course as part of plans. We will invest huge amounts of money to supply sustainable agricultural raw materials from millions of farmers. That's the scale. You are talking about scale. That's the scale that we need. And we understand, of course, that this is a long endeavor, but the long endeavor, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So we have engaged already in this first step and more. and we will be part of this race.
Thank you so much, Laurent. And Bia, would you please go next?
Yes, thank you. And first I have to say, Leah, I look forward to trying ice cream made out of insects. I can't wait. So after the pandemic's over and we can all travel, I'm coming to see you. So
Looking forward to it.
Thank you. I'll take this in two parts. So I think it's equally important to drive scale, to continue to work with established farmers at the same time that we work with entrepreneurs who are starting to create innovative ideas, Leah, much like yourself, and how do you scale those? So first, in terms of Coca-Cola, we have programs in Australia, in Northern India and Australia. One is in partnership with WWF to help prevent the runoff into the Great Barrier Reef, to make sure that they're looking at how those practices are run. Or in Northern India, where you have 48,000 smallholder farmers who are building different practices. How do you think about soil management? All the things that you would know from your practices are critically important. And we also know that the overlay of some of the issues that come into play, there's a lot of women farmers. And in 2010, Coca-Cola created a program called 5x20. It was, how do we empower 5 million women by 2020? And a big portion of those are actually in agriculture. So if you think of the percent of women that are the entrepreneurs like yourself, Leah, in these farming practices, how can we better support them? So today in 2020, we're going to meet the 5x20 goal because this is the year that we set to meet it. But we're already publicly reporting 4.6 million women in over 96 countries. Just to give you an example of one of these programs to help drive scale, is we found a common thread around the world, which is a lot of the women who were running these businesses didn't have a lot of the tools and the training to put some of these practices in place or to drive the efficiencies. So we worked with different not-for-profits, with municipal governments, to create what we called Business in a Box. And this program was able to give practical tools to help create some training, some development, as well as funding and resources. As Laurent mentioned in his discussion, this takes a lot of money as well to drive this change. And so how do we provide the funding? And so in some of these places, we also partner with the International Finance Corporation or the World Bank or other funding resources, not just Coca-Cola resources. We try to bring the partnerships into the dialogue, really to drive the scale, to bring increased funding access, and to make sure that we're measuring and tracking what's working. And then we could share that around the world with the other entrepreneurs that are coming onto the same types of ventures, not unlike yourself. So, I think at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. It creates, we really have to have financial investment, but we also have to have the skills investment. We have to make sure that we're transferring those skills, and that as an entrepreneur, I'm sure, Leah, you've had great successes, and at the same time, you've had many trials where you've learned a lot. It would be great to share those around the world with other women who are venturing on the same journey, so they don't make the same mistakes. And that helps to be able to make their businesses also more efficient and to share that back as well. So that I'll be brief to let the other panelists, go to other questions, but thank you for that question, for letting me weigh in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your responses. Yeah,
thank you very much. With that, we'll go to our next question from yet another female agro-entrepreneur from Africa. Bethlehem Dejeni is part of the Resilient 40 Network and co-founder of Zofri Paper in Ethiopia. And I had to apologize to Bethlehem because she put a figure related to the scale of the work that they're doing already. And I thought, no, there has to be like one less zero in that. And she corrected me, as she should. So Bethlehem, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kaya, for having me, and thank you for the introduction. Good morning and good evening, everyone from Ethiopia. My name is Bethlehem Dejeni, and I am an agro-environmental entrepreneur and also a member of the Resilient 40 Network. And the Resilient 40 Network is an African youth climate network made up of almost 70 young leaders from 29 African countries. And we are a unique, diverse diverse cross-sectorial group of passionate individuals committed to working with communities on climate and making their voices heard across Africa and also globally. So we created a platform to build a momentum to face the threat of climate change and to improve climate resilience across Africa. And for example, our company, Zafri Papers, in which I am a founder and CEO, makes 100% tree-free virgin paper pulp from agriculture waste that is traditionally burnt on site by small farmers for a quick turnaround of crops, but which also results in a high carbon emission, adding to the devastating climate change. And through Zafri, we work towards reducing impact on deforestation, climate change, waste generation, and also promotion of the circular economy, I can say, across Africa, step by step. So Zafri has engaged more than 8,000 small farmer suppliers who provide the agriculture waste as the main input for the factory in return for payment, which is an additional income for the small farmers as well. So in addition, Zafri's virgin paper pulp provides a much needed quality fiber for paper and paper product manufacturers, and also it have a value added byproduct, which is an organic fertilizer in which we give back to small farmers for free. So we make sure that nothing goes to waste in Zafri as we work in a closed loop system. Our production process is eco-friendly as we use 90% less water, 70% less energy, and our product is 100% recyclable and non-toxic. So we try to, you know, make sure that as a manufacturing factory, we try to make sure that we are following at least a very eco-friendly production process as well, not just saving the trees, but an eco-friendly production process as well. So today I want to ask my first question. I wanted to go to Nestle and also Rebecca from Impossible Foods. So my question is for Laurent and Rebecca is, what are you doing to engage the farmers in your supply chain and provide them with real incentives for adapting sustainable practices? So any of you can start.
So should I start?
Sorry,
You can go ahead, Laurent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congrats for your work on paper. We are also engaged in this paperization, trying to reduce the use of virgin plastic. We already got rid of the billions of straws that we use, but it's very interesting to see the solutions you have developed, eco-friendly in the spirit of circular ecosystem. That's really interesting. So yes, we got scale. We have factories in 80 countries plus. We buy more than 10% of the coffee crop worldwide, and same for the cocoa. So we are a major buyer of most of the agricultural commodities. And one of your colleague was highlighting cost and scale, but I would like to highlight as well quality, safety, traceability, sustainability as elements that, also ethical practices and respect of human rights as elements that are part of our sourcing cahier des charges. Increasingly, we try to work directly with agricultures. It's a big challenge for a supply chain of our scale and of our magnitude, but to date we supply directly from more than 400,000 farmers worldwide, and we provide them with training. And this is happening across 20 countries, including many in the global south, and I will give a couple of examples. And we are also supporting, as part of the program, 20,000 young agripreneurs, those that are settling in and that are developing their farm. And why is it important? Not only because I'm talking to you, but it's important also because I refer to the fact that smallholders today are aging. They are more representatives of the boomer generation and not so much of your generation. And it's of course a lot easier when it comes to applying new technologies, being innovative and being concerned and interested in sustainability. To work with the new generation, it's much quicker and gives a greater chance to get an impact. So it's not that we neglect the others, but we want to put a big focus on supporting young agripreneurs across 20 countries. Just would like to highlight 2 examples in Africa and maybe a couple also in Colombia and Honduras. In Ghana and Nigeria, we are working directly with 1,000 farmers as we speak, and the program has been developing the last couple of years. And we have been doing this program with the Sustainable Trade Initiative, IDH, and with the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. We believe in the power of collective action, and we believe in building bridges, not walls, and that it's important to work with partners like-minded to make an impact at greater scale. And in those 1,000 farmers, we managed to, through support, through training, through some investments, we managed to grow their income by 25 to 125%, securing them, of course, an outcome for their what they were farming. So it is part of the sustainability. Sustainability has got the environmental element to it, and it's really critical. We just got one planet, but we need to think of the economical side and the social side. So that's why we are so much focused on that. And if anything, we know that we will need to increase our supply directly from farmers and increase it over time. And I was talking about the millions of tons of agricultural raw material that we'll need to supply in a sustainable way. We believe also in the importance of regeneration. So this is part of our focus area, and we talk about billions that we will be investing in this respect. Bear with me a couple of weeks. Early December, we will provide full visibility on our roadmap, so you will get full details. But there are many things happening as we speak. And the other 2 examples are in Colombia and Honduras. We have developed schools for young coffee growers to train them, to give them the techniques and support them in being future coffee growers and preparing them to take over from the previous generation. And that's part of sustainability, to motivate and support young agripreneurs settle in the rural areas to be able to contribute to food security and to sustainable farming.
Laurent, thank you. That is so exciting. We look forward to reading your roadmap in full. I have been promised that it is very thorough. So to Bethlehem's next question, or same question.
Same question for Rebecca.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just anecdotally, I was kind of reflecting on less socially distant times at New York Climate Week from like 2019, and just this reminds me of getting exposed to all these incredibly cool young entrepreneurs and the amazing business models. So this is a lot of fun to hear about those. So we're actually working on this issue right now with 2 of our larger suppliers. I don't want to do that annoying corporate thing where I say I can't say exactly what we're doing, but I'm going to do it because we are still in a phase where things can still go wrong. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of being appropriate with the level of commitment that I'm making here. But in a nutshell, we're not out here like growing the major ingredients of the Impossible Burger or Impossible Sausage like in a field behind our headquarters. We do source from these huge commodity markets, both domestically and internationally. So some of the ingredients that we work with are soy protein, coconut oil, sunflower oil, potato protein, and there's this huge diversity of things that could be used, right? So it's incredibly important, though, while we have this broader mission, to continue to focus on agricultural sustainability within our own value chain. And so we've identified a couple of ways that we think that we can do that over the next several years. Keep in mind, we've only been on the market for about 4 years. And so we've kind of gotten to a point of business maturity where we can start doing this now. My personal background is agricultural sustainability. And so there are things like nutrient management, water conservation, yield improvement, and resilience To Laurent's point, smallholder attrition to different sectors. So figuring this out is just really important in addition to the broader plant-based meat mission overall. So yeah, I think one of the kind of wish list areas for us is to do something with conservation of biodiversity within working landscapes. But again, I'm going to have to kind of report back on a lot of this stuff. But there are two planning sessions or two kind of programmatic areas where we're going to try and figure out a 2021 launch of an agricultural sustainability program. So stay tuned. But based on what I've done in the past and based on kind of what I know about conservation on working landscapes and just what you need to do to kind of change practices within agricultural systems is whether you're looking at something like migratory bird habitat or conservation tillage or straight up easements. There's a lot of tactics out there, but it really helps if you pay farmers. It really helps if you pay them what it takes to manage that land. It helps if they are paid for the inputs associated with it, managerial overhead, and you need technical extension in place. So luckily we have some excellent partners in our supply chain to strategize with. So overall, the mission is to reduce reliance on monocultures, so corn and soy, by reducing demand for livestock feed production. All that corn and soy isn't grown to feed humans tofu. I think I mentioned this earlier, but it's, the success of the plant-based meat industry is hopefully, if we do this right and if we're thoughtful about how our sector scales, it could open up a lot of headroom for agricultural innovation in ways that are not necessarily focused exclusively on a lot of the sustainable intensification practices that we've seen in the past. Things like, a relentless focus on yield. If we reduce land use pressure overall, maybe that opens up a little bit more room for non-intensive forms of cropping, for crop diversification. And that's something that is a longer roadmap that I'm very excited to participate in.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. So I have a little treat for you all because we just really need to hear from our high-level champion, Gonzalo Munoz, who may be a friend to some of you, before we move to our last youth speaker who will bring it home with the last word. Gonzalo, would you please say some words?
Well, thanks so much, Kaya, and thanks to everybody. I really welcome this idea of putting together corporate and youth leaders, also to welcome the spirit of generosity, humility, and openness of the dialogue like this one. Many thanks, of course, to Oxford, SPS, and Oxford Net Zero, especially to you, Kaya, for hosting not only this one, but the series of youth setting agenda. First, let me refer to my first 3 lessons that I had since we started the dialogues with Nigel and the amazing Climate Champions team 8 days ago. The first lesson was when Nigel explained the difference between a dialogue and a debate. Debate is about combat, right? And dialogue is about searching for common understanding, fully validating the other with all the difference taken into consideration. And I think that we're seeing part of that here. And I applaud that as a possibility for moving forward. The second lesson was given by Kate Hayworth during the opening. She immediately set somehow the tone of something that we have repeated since then. She said, we are in a race to zero, but zero is nothing but a passing point towards regeneration. And we have repeating that because, yes, it's not only about reaching zero. It's what else do we have to do at the same time? What else do we have to do after we reach zero? And the third lesson was given by the youth in the first panel we had that Monday, with young people challenging adult leaders in such a respectful way, pushy but respectful. And I think that that's also opening a huge, a huge lot of possibilities on how do we move forward with this energy that the young people are bringing to topics like the climate challenges that we're facing. Many of you might know I am a farmer, and I truly believe we are the natural stewards of the climate and hold many of the solutions to the climate crisis. I was taught that way, and I studied that in the university, all of that. But then I've been noticing that we are now facing a cultural challenge. we have been educated in a wrong way in many aspects, and we have to re-educate ourselves. We have challenges on also integrating some cultures that we have been set apart. And yet many farmers at the same time are poor, and as we know, the younger generation of farmers want to migrate to cities to seek a better life there. The most productive land is now in many places in the hand of the older generation. We have to revitalize and regenerate farming. We're really expecting that the regenerative revolution will be the next .com revolution. And this is something that I would like to hear from our panelists. How do you see a possibility of bringing that type of spirit, that spirit that we see in the startups, or the technological startups? How do we bring that? Is the Impossible Food type of company the ones that will revitalize also the type of citizens that will be actively mobilizing the farms of the world? We need many more young farmers. We need that, and entrepreneurs, of course, such as the one that we have here. Of course, mentioning the difference that are here, and we need that also not only to improve and care for the soil in harmony with nature, to protect ecosystem, to produce more nutritious food, and to enjoy a life not of poverty, but one that is rewarding and valued by all of society. Humanity depends on everybody's related to the food production and farming. We also need improved data systems and accountability in all the way along our food production chain, with educates consumer, drives socially just regenerative agriculture, which restores and care for ecosystems and provide good livelihoods. Let's envision this world where regenerative farming and plant-based diets are the norm, where farming is a life which young people want to pursue and bring their skills and ideas to. I'm willing to hear from all of you, but first from you, B. How do you envision this possibility of positioning the spirit of the high technology industries, specifically into the production of products that for so long has been probably not that validated by society, and how do we use that in order to make farming the most aspirational way of life?
Gonzalo, I would need an hour to give you a truly complete answer.
I have all life to listen to you.
That's right. Well, what I want to say is actually it's this generation that's pushing everyone who's on the phone, the people here who are asking the questions on this video. It's people like you, Gonzalo, who started businesses to make sure that you were transforming the areas that you could with skills and capability. So for those of you who don't know, Gonzalo actually created a company, Triciclos, which has been doing collection and recycling in places like Chile, across Latin America, that we've been fortunate to partner with. I think what's really the key to success, in Gonzalo, what I saw you have done, is the simplicity of the messaging. It's making sure that, as this generation is pushing us to be better, companies have to set goals. We have to report out. We must be transparent. We have to drive funding towards solutions, drive the scale that you've heard everyone talk about on the call. At the same time, what I saw you do in some of the programs you've created is the simplicity of the message, so people could understand what problem are we trying to solve? How do we get there? What's the path, and how clear can that path be? So everyone knows what role they have to play. So each one of us can take accountability, because of course, companies like Coca-Cola must take accountability. As a major multinational, we must do better, and we must be transparent. We can't give ourselves accolades. We have to continue to find the problems in our businesses and turn those around and transform them through innovation, partnership with entrepreneurs, partnerships with government, with other businesses. And so I do think that we have to make sure that we are telling the story in terms of what is the problem, how do we get there and solve it, how do we work together, and relentless. The thing that I love about this generation is you are out there, you're pushing, you're not accepting the answers that we give, you're saying do better, be more transparent. And we want to see outcomes and results. We don't just want to see activities. And so that's what I think needs to happen. It needs to happen more often. It needs to happen in every single geography. And everyone has to take the accountability. And so we also have to forgive each other. The one thing I will say, and I think we've learned through this pandemic, is we have to try, but we can't be afraid of failure. So we have to give each other permission to fail and permission to be transparent about those failures so we can learn from them and then pick ourselves up and keep moving forward to drive the solutions. And so we can't operate out of fear. We have to operate out of always wanting to improve and do better. So thank you, Gonzalo, for that question. Thank you for the partnership and for your drive and your energy to get the generations working together.
Thanks so much, B. And in the honor of transparency, you, Becca, and some of you, Lee, you will be invited to join Race to Zero with all of this energy that I carry with the mandate of the high-level champions of me. You will have Nigel and myself bringing you on board. So thank you. I have to go to a meeting on resilience, but thank you again, Kaya. This is amazing. Let's keep the hard work. Thanks so much. And thanks to Charles as well, to the Oxford as well, for all the work.
Thank you so much. It was really lovely to have you, Gonzalo. And I love how you snuck in there that invitation to join the Race to Zero. We are on a campaign, and it's a global campaign. So thank you, Gonzalo. Our next speaker, and the one you've all been waiting for, is Kaluki Paul. And Kaluki, would you please give us some last words to sort of reframe the discussion in this Youth Setting the Agenda?
Thanks, Kaya, and hi, everyone. It gives me such a big pleasure to join this panel at this point and sort of give a final youth closing statement. And of course, it's a bit hard to follow from what Gonzalez has put as an energy to this conversation. But yeah, I just want to take us back, closer home and just try to relate to the issues that we're discussing today and how I've had like a journey as a person. So my name is Kaluki Paul Mutuku, and I am a 27 years old climate activist and environmental defender from Kenya. I'm born of a single mother and I filled with rich childhood memories from my village. And to contextualize this, I grew up next to nature, well, at least for the first few years of my life that I could see it. And this was before things turned south. I witnessed as villagers would actually bring down forests for timber, for charcoal, and also to expand the agricultural lands. And this clearly left their scenes really ugly for us and for the immediate natural world. At the same time, I also witnessed how my mother and other women in the village would actually cover long treks, trying to find water for domestic use. At the same time, they spend so much time away from their children, and this sort of reduced the bonding moments together. And I have seen really the negative effects of climate change. I have seen how poor communities can drive the natural safeguards into destruction. And you see, current models ensure that the poor are the most left with little to no options other than destroying the natural world for survival. I have seen how our lands have had to bear the brunt of drought and famine striking on our communities. I've also experienced firsthand the effects of industrial agriculture that it has on our climate and cultural systems. See, my mother would cover several kilometers to fetch water every day, while companies actually bottle and sell this water and source products with industrial agricultural practices, which lead to increased global warming and more droughts. And these droughts separate mother and child for increasingly more hours every day in search for these scarce waters remaining in their communities. So it is because of all this that I must say that the current commitments do not go far enough. I live in Africa, the continent which has contributed least to global emissions, and yet which is bearing the brunt of global warming. We know that agriculture and food system emissions contribute to about 15% of greenhouse gases. So this first question, and probably to Rebecca first, for those of you that haven't, will you act now and take responsibility to be part of this and join the Race to Zero? We understand that, before I let it over to you, we do understand that developing the climate strategies actually for large companies like yours takes some longer time. But if you can respond to us, you cannot respond to us today, we ask you to please come back to us with an answer soon, perhaps another dialogue, and clearly with more action than speeches and, grounded on justice. So thank you so much. And if Rebecca can respond to that.
Kaluki, actually, we've come to the end of our session, and you know what? I think that that's a perfect thought to go away with. I think we've had a call to all of our panelists to not only join the Race to Zero, but continue to do the incredible work that they're doing to build a sustainable agricultural system that ensures food security and soil health. So I'm going to have to leave us all there just so that our AV team can go be with their children and so that we can all reflect on this. Thank you all so much for joining us. And Kaluki, thank you so much for closing. That meant a lot.